Good morning, everyone here in the room and also those following us in the platform. First of all, I would like to thank the organization committee for considering this presentation for this prestigious activity. As teachers, we are all usually concerned about the development of our students in terms of their cognitive skills and their social competences. And that is why we always gather in activities like this in order to reinforce our competences and to get and share experiences in order to improve our strategies, our teaching strategies. And that is also the same reason why I decided to be here with you and I asked for being here with you, because I want to share some facts about intercultural competence and inclusion. In doing this morning we will review some concepts, go through some ideas with intercultural competence. Doesn't work. Okay, thank you very much. In doing this, we will review some concepts, go through some ideas about intercultural competence development, and review some general aspects of our national context, go over some maximums of inclusive education, and at the end share some tips about building intercultural competence in our language classrooms. Our main goals this morning will be exactly understanding a little bit more or deeper the term or the concept intercultural competence. Also its importance, and share some tips and ideas about how to build intercultural competence in the language classrooms. But before we do that, let's have some reflection. Let's think about our classrooms as teachers. Let's first think about how different our students are. Do we really think about them and their differences when we plan our lessons? How acquainted with the terms culture, interculture, cultural diversity, and inclusion are we? Do we really take into account those terms and concepts and their implications when we plan our lessons, when we share with our students? Well, after you have reflected something or some ideas about the questions that I just asked, it is important for us to get in the same page. And to get on the same page, we're going to review some concepts. First of all, it is really important to talk about culture. And for the purposes of this presentation, we are going to define culture the way that UNESCO does. UNESCO has defined culture as a set of distinctive spiritual, material, intellectual, and emotional features of a society or social group, encompassing all the ways of being in that society. At a minimum, encompassing art, literature, lifestyles, ways of living together, value systems, traditions, and beliefs. Some parts or some elements or components of our culture are visible and some others are invisible. So let's have this metaphor, the iceberg metaphor, which is usually the one depicting exactly how we can view our cultural components. Those elements of culture that we can see are our products: arts, books, literature, music. They are the tangible elements of culture and the so-called elements of the objective culture. But in the deep part of the iceberg, the one that we cannot see, we can compare that with the triggering elements, those which are the basics of our behaviors, of our experiences, and the way we think and act. That is our values, our perspectives, our perceptions, our worldview, our beliefs. Intercultural competence deals with valuing, recognizing, appreciating, and being aware of those subjective elements of culture. Now, Lynch and Hansen have a very beautiful way of describing culture, and they say that culture is akin to being the person observed through a one-way mirror. When we see ourselves in a one-way mirror, we can only see ourselves. We're not able to see anything or anybody else. But the only way it is only when we join the observed on the other side that it is possible to see ourselves and others clearly. And that's being interculturally competent, okay? Getting to the other side of the glass sometimes has many challenges. Now, after we have talked about and defined culture and understand what culture is and the objective and subjective elements of culture, it is also very important for us to define what diversity is. And we can define diversity in a very simple way. Being diverse is just being different. Diversity is an omnipresent element. There is difference everywhere. We're all different. And those differences can be in regards to language, race, color, disability, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, gender, socioeconomic status, veteran status, family relationships and family structures, and also where people are from, where they have lived, and their differences of thoughts and life experiences. So diversity means those differences that really make the difference, okay? Those things, those elements in regards to us and our groups that make us different. Now, having analyzed culture and diversity, it is important then to analyze a little bit what intercultural competence is. Intercultural competences, according to Fantini and Terzemi, are those abilities that adeptly navigate complex environments marked by a growing diversity of peoples, cultures, and lifestyles. In other terms, intercultural competences are those abilities to perform effectively and appropriately when interacting with others who are linguistically and culturally different from oneself. As I said before, being interculturally competent then requires for us to recognize, value, and appreciate differences, the diversity of people. Talking about intercultural competence then, we know that it has also been defined as the ability, as we can see in that diagram, as the ability to develop our attitudes and skills and knowledge about our culture and others' culture in order to perform effective communication and interaction. As we can see here, those attitudes deal with being open, discovering the differences, being aware, respecting those differences, and being curious about sharing and interacting with all people regardless of their differences or their beliefs. Now, the skills have to do with listening, analyzing, critical thinking, or evaluating those differences, those cultural elements. And culture, as I already explained, has to do with those identity elements, the beliefs, the values, and being self-aware. It is very important for being interculturally competent, being aware of our own culture and the other people's culture. But why is it important, or why has it become so important to talk about intercultural competence or to talk about interculturalism? Well, as we all know, we live in a world that has been and is globalized more and more. Migration and immigration dynamics have been changing a lot, and borders and frontiers are almost disappearing. The internationalization, the dynamics of education and work mobilities, and also professional and student modalities, and also work and student studying mobility, are dynamics that have led us to have countries and cultures which are growingly diverse, not only locally, but also internationally. We have working nomads, digital nomads, people from different cultures coming to our country and going back and forth in different cultures and different places. So becoming interculturally competent and developing our skills in order to have effective communication is a topic that has to do with respect, and living together in peace and harmony. And in regards to this, UNESCO calls 4 pillars of education: learning to know, learning to do, learning to live together, and learning to be. Intercultural competence is inherent to these pillars of education because it empowers participation, it enables interaction and engagement with cultural other, it bridges differences, it diffuses conflicts, it frees people from their own logic and cultural idioms, it combats prejudice, it strengthens social cohesion, and it also complements human rights because it promotes, as I said before, peaceful and harmonious coexistence. In sum, we can say that intercultural competent people should be aware, be able to understand and have awareness of their own culture, be aware of how their culture is seen from the outside by other cultures, understand or see the target culture from his or her own perspective, and also be aware of how themselves see the target culture. That's being interculturally competent in sum. Now, having diversity and intercultural competence, we can affirm that intercultural competence is the bridge between diversity and inclusion. Because when we respect differences, we design strategies and become more sensitive, more sensible, more humanized in different environments, and especially in our educational environments as well. And with that intercultural competence, respecting and appreciating and valuing diversity, we therefore become inclusive. Because as you know, being inclusive means leveraging so that everybody can have the same opportunities to participate and to contribute. But talking about the importance of intercultural competence, isn't it important also to talk about our Costa Rican context? To see how much our Costa Rican context is prepared or has several characteristics that lead us to have policies, strategies, and measures for including interculturalism in our educational system. Well, in Costa Rica, we've had from 2016 to 2020, 75,000 people in transit. Those people who have the dream of going to the United States in search of the American dream. And those people who have been in transit in Costa Rica interact with our culture. And they come from different countries, like Nepal, Bangladesh, RD Congo, Congo-Brazzaville, Cameroon, Eritrea, and Haiti. That is a fact. A lot of people use Costa Rica as a way of transit, okay, in order to go to different countries and for migration from their country. We also have Nicaraguans and Panamanians coming permanently to Costa Rica, especially the indigenous Nobe, and also different ethnical groups from Nicaragua and Panama, especially for labor migration, looking for better opportunities. So we have a lot of people living in Costa Rica who come from Nicaragua, Panama, Colombia, and other places. Now, we also have people coming from the United States who are migrants who have migrated to Costa Rica. They usually migrate here for investment, or they are just retired people in search of peace and happy life here in our country. And they establish here in different parts of our country. And they make our culture more diverse. Also, according to the IOM, which is the International Organization of Migrations, Latin America and the Caribbean receive 4% of global migratory flow. And let's take a look and pay a lot of attention to this data. 10.2% of our population in Costa Rica was born in a different country. So our country is really multi and pluricultural. That is why we need to study and to enhance and to promote interculturalism in our educational systems in order to live in peace and harmony and, of course, as I said before, become inclusive. But beyond those data, we also have a specific mandate in our Constitution. Our Constitution states that Costa Rica is a free, independent, multi-ethnic, and multicultural democratic republic. This article was amended in 2015. And then Article 33 of our Constitution says that all persons in Costa Rica are equal before the law, and no discrimination contrary to human dignity shall be practiced. And in order to accomplish and to comply with what is established in our Constitution, our educational system needs to promote respect to diversity and inclusion. And that includes, of course, becoming interculturally competent. Beyond that, in year 2019, the Ministry of Education launched a policy, some guidelines, and a directive, specifically with orientations and some guidelines for implementing interculturalism in elementary and elementary school. So it is something that we have to do in order to accomplish education for all. In order to have an education which is inclusive, respectful of differences, we need to have like 3 different levels. The policy, the national, the law, as I already explained. In Costa Rica, we have the Constitution and the directive from the Ministry of Education. But also, we need a second level, which is the organization or the school we work in as well. How are we organized? How much we promote that? And more specifically, and from my point of view, much more important is what are teachers committed to do? How much teachers are committed to implementing teaching strategies in order for students to become respectful and interculturally competent. And that is the 3rd level, teaching strategies that goes from pedagogy to curriculum, facilities, and other elements. So those conditions are necessary in order for us to have an inclusive system. What is the aim of inclusion? As we can see, the aim of inclusion is to embrace all people, irrespective of gender, race, disability, medical, or other need. It is about giving equal access and opportunities and getting rid of discrimination and intolerance. That is, being able to remove barriers and provide all supports that are necessary for our students and for people to have the same opportunities to participate and to contribute, as I said before. But which are the aims, the main aims of inclusion? To end all forms of discrimination, to foster social cohesion, according to UNESCO, and also to identify and remove, as I said, all barriers. And the dimensions are various. We have access and participation. So an inclusive institution, an inclusive country needs to take care of the design of their educational facilities, of access, connectivity, materials, resources, etc. Participation, removing barriers so that all students are able to participate. And also there is another dimension, which is the disability management. And for that, we have our law, which is Law 7600 law. And that law establishes all the conditions that are necessary in our country in order to have, to cover all the needs that our population holding some disabilities can require in order to be able to participate in equal conditions. And another dimension of an inclusive system is, as I said before, diversity management. And that goes, again, through 3 different elements or areas or factors. facilities or infrastructure, pedagogy, and the curriculum, and also the policy level. So let's think about our schools now. Let's take some seconds to go to our work environments, mentally at least, and think about how they are, how they look like, and how we behave as teachers in our schools. How could you, your group, or your school benefit from improved intercultural competence? How would that be? Can you imagine your school being more interculturally competent and promoting more activities, strategies, and spaces to include people regardless of their cultural differences? Can you think of any initiatives that your school has done or thought of and that would be beneficial for students and the school itself? If the answer to these questions is no, then we have a lot of work to do after this seminar. We need to start working, complying with our law, with the international context, and most important of all, promoting and including people and complying with our human right and our human duty to include everybody in our system. Are you using yourself intercultural strategies or strategies while teaching to promote the knowledge of different cultures? And not only the knowledge, but as I explained before, the respect for those differences? Well, in the last part of this presentation, I would like to share with you as English teachers all these elements that we have discussed: culture, diversity, and intercultural competence in order to have an inclusive system. How can we build those strategies? How can we build intercultural competence in our language classroom? Well, being intercultural communicative competent is something that goes beyond the intercultural competence, because when you value and respect differences, you have those intercultural environments, but in a language classroom, you have to promote that intercultural communicative competence. Being competent in a language requires understanding the culture that has defined it and how that culture relates to one's own culture. So you need to use authentic materials, authentic resources in order to promote intercultural communicative competence in your students. When we are interculturally communicatively competent, we turn those intercultural encounters into intercultural relationships. We go beyond the encounters to relationships, and as I said before, to promote harmonious coexistence. Determination to understand, to gain an inside view of the other's culture while also contributing to the other person's understanding of his or her own culture from an insider's point of view is crucial to develop this competence in our language classrooms. Now, there are some principles for effective intercultural communicative language teaching and learning. Effective intercultural teaching needs to take some principles into account, such as exploratory, discovery-based learning. If we talk about exploratory, discovery-based learning, then we need to design our classes, our strategies, our techniques, our instruments, our materials for students to have the opportunity to discover and explore. Case studies are a great source for that. Also interviewing, comparing and contrast, etc. Also, comparing and connecting cultures and social interaction is another principle for effective intercultural communicative language teaching. We need to use, as I said before, sources and materials to promote in our students the knowledge and the connection among cultures. This model proposes a starting point of exposure to a wide range of authentic texts and sources, including oral, performative, visual, and written texts or sources, and/or opportunities for interaction with speakers of the target language. Working from this starting point that you see over there, which is the input, learners are encouraged to notice feature. And what is to notice? To become self-aware, or to become aware and appreciate those features of the communicative event that they are unfamiliar with, that they are just becoming aware of. Noticing or awareness requires learners to draw their culture general knowledge, as well as to make comparisons between the observed communication and their own. Then they discuss the reasons for these features, as well as their personal response to them. If they are discussing, they are reflecting. They are thinking about the elements that they are studying. And then opportunities for communication are the ones that follow, as you can see there. Allowing our students to experiment with new forms, expressions, or strategies derived from the earlier input, the input that you gave to them. If it's a case study, in the case study, they need first to read it and to identify those differences, those cultural elements that are present in the case study and that they need to become aware of. They discuss and become aware of those elements. They reflect, analyze, and learn to appreciate those cultural elements present in that strategy. And after that, they can produce something out of the fact of being reflective. Now, learners then attend to how comfortable these feel and how useful the communication was interpersonally. They interact with others in analyzing probably the case study or any other strategy that you use. To sum up, we cannot forget that the emphasis on intercultural awareness and competencies need to be always present into the curriculum management and design. And also that teaching intercultural competence in our classrooms requires to adopt an inclusive approach, as I said, in the curriculum and in the pedagogical strategies. Self-awareness, awareness of the other, using realia, analyzing and evaluating, increasing the exposure of our students to different elements of culture, and reflective learning are strategies that we can never forget as English teachers and as teachers in general, because as we saw before, teaching intercultural competence goes beyond language teaching. It needs to be all along our educational system. With these strategies, we're finally there, and we need to think that every learner matters. When being interculturally competent and for an inclusive educational approach, every learner matters and matters equally. Thank you very much.